Hello, and welcome to the 11th and final in a series of live stream broadcasts entitled Four Winds on Wednesdays, featuring members of and friends of the Los Angeles Symphonic Winds. My name is Stephen Piazza, and I'm very privileged to be the director of the Los Angeles Symphonic Winds. And I was just looking over the series that we've put together for these past, several months, that featured many of the people in the band and some great performances. And I was just looking at the variety of people we've had on. I, of course, had a chance to talk a little bit about my history and development of the band. And then we talked with Carolyn Maraghi and Claudia Peterson about their work in the entertainment industry. Steve Wallachin, the president of the operations committee, who has been so instrumental in being a producer for these productions, talked with his friend Scott Mandel about wines. We got a tour of the wine country. Mark Marcus and Paula Savastano talked about some of the legal aspects of the music business. Bob Crosby showed that clip from when he was appeared on television on the Dinah Shore show. And we've had a number of things about cultural interests that Andre Van Coor and Susan Winberg did. We've done a number of fascinating things, and it's been a real thrill for me not only to share these things with you, but for me to get to know a little bit more about the personalities and the interests of our players. Plus, we've just heard some great performances over the course of these podcasts. Carolyn Maraghi playing the trumpet. Bon Am, I particularly remember that, her performance on oboe with the guest cat soloist. So we've done some really nice things. Karen Rasmussen on the saxophone. Chuck Zimmerman and I did a nice Beethoven duet. It's been just a real thrill to share these things with you. And I'm kind of sad that it's coming to an end, but now we're getting ready for some live broadcast things, and that's going to be very exciting. We have, as many of you know already, 2 concerts coming up live and in person, one at the Skirball Center on July 18th. And we also will have one at the home of one of our major donors in Chatsworth, and that's going to be August 22nd. We'll have about 50 people in attendance for that, but for the Skirball Center, we're hoping and we're anticipating a crowd of about 350. 2 different concerts, 300 rather. 2 different concerts, one featuring 150 people in the audience, the other featuring 150 people in the audience. So it's going to be just phenomenal to get back to live performing events. And today we have some great guests. Actually, 2 of them, one of them you've met before, and that's going to be Debbie MacMurry. She was here a little while ago talking about the flute ensembles that she's in and the large flutes that are involved in that. She and Sue Anderson talked about that. Today she's going to join us at the opposite end of the extreme with some things about the piccolo, as a matter of fact, and a great performance that she did of a wonderful piece by Stephen Bulla. Then we'll be joined by 2 of our outstanding trombone players who lead interesting lives outside of the world of trombone. So we'll be talking with Daniel Orkin, who has a history as a bugle player, a bagpipe player, and of course, a trombone player. And then we'll meet up with Mike Hicks, who has also performed with some phenomenal local bands. The Top Hats is one of them that I'm familiar with. And also he'll tell an interesting story about his playing an impromptu duet with Miles Davis, as a matter of fact. And then we will skip ahead to a tribute to Memorial Day, coming up with a performance of a piece called Armed Forces Medley, which pays tribute to all the members of our armed forces. It's something we recorded a number of years ago. So I think without further ado, I'd like to, at this point, bring up Debbie MacMurry, who's going to talk to us about the piccolo a little bit. So if you can join us, Debbie, that would be just great.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, there we are.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for rejoining us. That was a fascinating discussion you and Sue had the other day when we were talking about the big flutes. But today we're going to be talking about something else on the other end of the stream. Now, would you mind, just because I don't think we got into it before, how you began your musical path that has led us to your involvement with the LA Symphonic Winds, not only as a flute player, but some things you've done in your career as an administrator too that I think the audience will find interesting.
Well, as way back in the 4th grade, which was a few years ago, I heard someone play Stars and Stripes Forever, and I went, I want to do that. So I went to my my parents and said, hey, I want to do that. I came from a musical family. And they're like, well, at that time, they knew I wanted to play an instrument, but it was kind of like, which one? Because when I was 5, I had the measles, and I have no hearing in my left ear and only partial in my right. So it was kind of like, well, I don't know if she's going to be able to play an instrument. And so the flute, as you can know, when you play it, it goes right out the right side. So I was like, okay, this will work. So they said, you got to play the flute. So I picked up the flute and played that through college and high school, and really loved the piccolo, played a lot of piccolo things. Piccolo soloist, played in pit orchestras and community events and so forth. And then ended up playing a lot of things in San Diego. That's where I landed with some work that I was doing. And then played for like 25 years with the Coastal Communities Concert Band, which our band, LA Winds, did a joint concert with them. And I actually got to play the solo there. That was really cool, like going home. And that was a lot of fun. And then my first husband passed away, and I ended up getting married again, and he lived in LA. So I was like, oh, I guess I got to move to LA. So I got a hold of, he knew Chuck Fernandez, who's been on this series before, and the two of them said, oh, you got to come meet Steve and, join the LA Winds. So that's how I end up meeting you at a party at Chuck's house, and said, hey, you got room in your flute section? And you said yes.
Yes, I remember you talked about that before. But now, if you wouldn't mind taking us on a little journey through some of your interests outside of as a player, because I know you were involved in a flute organization, and also you've had an interesting professional career. Would you mind sharing that with us just a little bit?
Sure. I was treasurer of the National Flute Association and a lot of community chair events and so forth. It's like 5,000 flutists, and everyone there volunteers. Even when James Galway, who's a huge name in the flute community, comes and plays, he does it for free. So we love the flute. It's quiet everywhere else in the world except for where the convention is once a year in August. And so I was treasurer there for 5 years. And helped with that. And then I always say that music has been my passion, but it's also been my therapy, because in my day job, I'm a grievance manager, director for a mental health plan. So I listen to people with their complaints and grievances about their providers and their care and their mental health services all day long. And then I get to play music afterwards, and it kind of gives me therapy afterwards. So it's a lot of fun. Excellent. Some of the other things I do, though, is I rescue dachshunds. Got to have a pet around for pet therapy. I rescue cats. We have koi fish, turtles, and a one-legged crow that I feed on the back fence every day. And then we also have a joy. My husband and I love to travel, and I take cooking lessons in, France, Paris, Barcelona, wherever we are. I take cooking lessons in hopes to have some cultural from our trip come home with us, and really, really enjoy that. So
excellent. Now you put together a piece for it. Now this is kind of interesting, because all we had was the audio version of this, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I decided, without even asking you, if I could put some still pictures with this, and I think I should probably tell the audience a little bit about the still pictures that I throw in. Some will be pretty obvious. There's the god Pan cavorting in his lascivious way, which we'll see him doing in a couple of the stills. And there's also an interesting shot of a woman playing the piccolo and crying at the same time. And many of our sports fans and Facebook fans will remember that, because she was in the Villanova band, and that was the night just in March when Villanova was defeated by North Carolina State in the March Madness basketball game. So that's why she looks kind of sad while she's playing. And there's also a figure of a gentleman, and you know who that is, right? Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Right. Meredith Wilson was the piccolo player in the John Philip Sousa band. And we all know him from writing Music Man and doing other things. But at the time, and then I also saw him and James Galway do a duet concert with the LA Phil in the Hollywood Bowl, because he played, the flute, the piccolo, and that was just really neat to see him. He also wrote a book, which is very, very tiny, but it's called And There I Stood with My Piccolo, which talks about his life in the John Philip Sousa band. So,
and I understand you played this piece, which is originally written for the flute. You decided to do it on piccolo. Can you tell us a little bit about this piece and this composer? And then
sure. Stephen Bulla is the composer. He graduated from Berklee School of Music with, accolades, and in the 80s was the staff arranger at the President's Own Marine Band and White House Orchestra. And then I think he went all the way through the Reagan administration. Also worked with John Williams in transcribing a lot of the Star Wars music for the Marine Band, and the two of them worked together. I actually emailed him and called him and said, I'm thinking about doing this on piccolo. What do you think? And he said, well, if I'd thought about it, I would have written it for piccolo, because at least you don't need to have amplification. Whereas with a flute player, in most cases, if the group is large, you do, and then there's no control over it and you don't really get true sound. So he really liked the idea. I sent him a copy of the recording and he said he loved it and gave me a thumbs up. So I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Not bad for the composer to say, good job.
Next one. All right. Well, let's take a listen to this now. Thank you for sharing those stories. And let's hear an excerpt from that piece by Stephen Bulla with our very own Debbie MacMurry playing piccolo with the Los Angeles Symphonic Winds. Wow, that's just great, Debbie. Now I want to share with you, though, a piece of music that actually all the band gets to do kind of some virtuosic things. And one of the neat things about this series is we've been able to pull recordings out of the past and share them with our contemporary subscribers and audience. So let's take a listen to a piece called Galop, which really gallops quite a lot, by Dmitri Shostakovich, with the whole band with a lot of notes to play. Well, that piece does indeed rock, doesn't it? There's some great playing, a lot of notes going by. Debbie wasn't part of the band then. It shows you how far back we go, that we've been doing quality things, but Debbie certainly adds another level of quality to that flute section. So thank you so much for sharing that piece with us, Debbie. Now I'd like to bring in a couple of brass players, a couple of people from our outstanding trombone section, people that have interesting backgrounds and, of course, add greatly to the artistry of the Los Angeles Symphonic Winds. Would you join me, please, in welcoming both Daniel Orkin and Mike Hicks to the live stream? There's Daniel and there's Mike. Thanks you two guys, both of you, for joining us today. I really appreciate that. Now, Daniel, when I first met you, of course, I knew that you were a trombone player because that's what you came into the band and played. But at that point, I had no idea that you were so versatile in the brass world and that had the bugle in your background. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Well, certainly. Like most of the instruments I started learning, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I can't remember if it was if I had asked for it or if it was a spontaneous gift. I must have mentioned it at some point, but I figured this was probably right around the time I had gotten my braces off, which the braces, one of the reasons I had chosen the trombone. So I had been in scouting for a number of years and decided and figured it would be kind of fun to go and learn the bugle calls and there weren't too many people.
There you are there with your bugle. Do you still have that instrument, as a matter of fact? There it is.
The very same.
The very same one. Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Daniel. That's a neat story about your past. Now, Mike, like Daniel, you also started playing trombone around the time that you were in junior high, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started in junior high through high school, and excuse me, but that was part of the thing that really influenced me playing the trombone for the rest of my life. Was the guys up in front of the room. In junior high was Mr. Olinsky, which a lot of people watching this are going to know him, and then in high school, Mr. Futuro. These guys, if it wasn't for them, I don't think any of us would have continued playing. They were really powerhouses.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I had a guy named Sheldon Mayer at Van Nuys Junior High School. A very positive guy that influenced me greatly to go on with that. Now, you went on to also do some work at Disneyland, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, the guy that was my private instructor he had the gig over there, and he got me in over there for a while. And so I got to go in and play in the marching band, playing, walking down Main Street with that. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to get a lot of people hating me after this, but I have PTSD playing It's a Small World after that 1,000 times.
No, listen, I agree with you entirely. If there is a hell and I die and go there, that will be the song that's being played every moment for eternity for me.
Yeah, now, that was horrifying, but it was fun though. That was actually a fun song to play.
All right, I get it. I'm glad it was you and not me. Now, you also got involved with some big bands. Would you mind sharing some of the stills that you've got of that?
Yeah, right out of high school, This came a little bit later, this picture here. This is a bunch of friends of mine. They get together and play once a month. And this is just an enormous amount of fun. We were actually playing for a wedding or something here, which was fun. But right out of high school, I got recruited into a couple of 17-piece bands, and then it led me to this, which is the Top Hat Band, where I'm sitting. I'm the third one down, sitting next to David Neubauer down there on his contrabassoon, which he's gone now. But boy, I'll tell you, he was good. He was outstanding. And there I am in my plaid, my John Fogerty shirt, playing in the Top Hat Band. And this is Bones West. This is the biggest kick in the pants that could possibly be. You think playing with a bunch of flute players is fun? Try this. 100 trombone players. And here we are playing in a horn section, me and some other guys that we play a lot together. And you notice the trumpet player here and the bass player have horns behind their head.
My gosh.
And here I am playing with
here's this one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, this was where I was playing in the horn section with the trumpet player, the two of us. And there was a sax player, which is not in this picture, but we were playing with the Arthur Adams Band, who's the band leader for B.B. King. And this was the whole part of that. Playing my green P-bone in this picture with my little green lights lighting up on the end of my slide.
Happy. Excellent. Now, I understand that you had a kind of a rare encounter with one of the musical giants that you got to play with. Would you mind relating that story to our audience? I found it fascinating. Well,
being a wallpaper hanger in my day life, I was hanging wallpaper in everybody's house. Way back in a couple lifetimes ago, I was actually working in Miles Davis's house. Didn't know it was his house at first, but he comes out and he's watching me hang the wallpaper in his hallway or something. I can't remember what I was doing. And he was just fascinated over this. And I said, I know you. Aren't you Miles Davis? Yes, I am. I said, oh, good. I play trombone. And he made me stop what I was doing, come into his back room where his little studio is. It was at the end of this hallway. There's this little tiny little door, and it goes into this big giant room where he had all his drums and saxophones and trumpets, and he had a trombone in there. So he gave me this trombone, and he put something on his reel-to-reel that started playing that gives you a kind of a date. So we're playing along, and so I just jammed with him for about 2 hours, and it was the most fun I had in a long time.
What a great story that is. Now, Daniel, I understand that you, besides the trombone and the bugle, you had an interest in an instrument that many of us know of but don't know much about. And I guess that happened when you were going to the University of California at Riverside. Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It actually happened in high school. The high school mascot was the Highlander as well. This is actually the photo you see is actually with the marching band. A couple of us were piping at the time.
Is that Granada Hills High School?
That is Granada Hills High School.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, look.
That's probably in the gym of Granada Hills High School. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and it was had a lot of fun. In fact, since people knew I also played the bagpipes after playing the bugle next to Scoutmaster's tents in the morning, they actually had me play the bagpipe outside the Scoutmaster's tents in the morning. But I went and once I finished with high school, I went to college where the mascot was also the Highlander, and continued playing there for a while, and had quite a lot of fun.
Excellent. Now, Mike, if I could turn back to you, and I guess nobody's wearing kilts. We won't know for sure, but I assume nobody's wearing kilts today.
That's why we're sitting like this.
All right, probably just as well, Mike.
Yeah.
So now, listen, you shared with us, and I'm so glad you did this. Not the duet that apparently you and Miles didn't record, so we're not going to be able to share that with anybody today. But you did a fascinating thing together with Andrea Vencora, who's appeared on this show before. Ange has talked about some cultural things with Czechoslovakia and some compositions that she's written. But even then, at that time, I never asked her about, nor did I know that she was playing many other instruments. And on the video clip we're about to see, it begins, of course, with you two playing trombone, but then we see her playing drum set and also keyboards on this. So it was fascinating for me to watch this. Go ahead. You're going to talk about this a little bit.
Andrea is great. I just think she is an amazing person. So what we decided we were going to do this, and so I came up with the arrangement, and so I sent it over to her. So she sends me her trombone part. So I did mine to it, and then she comes up with all this. I said if I had time, I'd do the bass part too, but I didn't have the time. So she came up with all that stuff, and I'm thinking, yes, came out.
Yeah. It was great. So what we're going to play it now. Now I had forgotten. I'll be frank with you, Mike. I'd forgotten how this piece was used not only as a great, solo piece that Simon and Garfunkel did. We're going to look at the Sounds of Silence that you guys did, but also I forgot that such a played an important part as kind of representative of the kinds of things that were happening in Dustin Hoffman's life when he was in The Graduate. And so I put the playing that you guys did, and you'll see them playing at the beginning in our audience, but then also the section, how it's used in the movie The Graduate. And I think you'll enjoy it. But Mike, it was great playing it. Let's take a look at that, and then we'll join you guys on the other side. Wow, that's great, Mike. What a neat arrangement. And I had no idea that Ange could, the fills that she did on the keyboard, you're absolutely right. They're just really tasty.
Fabulous.
Yeah. You probably just gave her a lead sheet with chords, I'm guessing, and she did filled it in.
I didn't even give her that. I gave her 2 trombone parts, a lead and a second, and she did it from that.
Amazing. Some great musical stuff. That was interesting as all get out. Now, listen, Daniel, if I could turn back to you for just a minute. Outside of the field of music, I understand that you're involved in things that have garnered a lot of attention recently. You're in the field of security, for data security, that whole field, and a lot of people have concerns about that. And maybe you can give some advice to them about not only the kinds of things that you do, but what they might do to protect themselves from cyber raiders and all that stuff that we hear about in this digital age.
So primarily, my focus is on the network side. What I can suggest is that if you have your Internet of Things, so your smart home things, your Echoes, your Google, your whatever it is, you put them on if your router has a guest network, put them on that, just so they're segregated from your standard equipment. So if those are compromised, then it won't affect the rest of your equipment. Make sure your routers and your wireless equipment is kept up to date. There's been most people aren't out to get people at home, but you can keep yourself protected just by taking a few easy steps.
Excellent. So it doesn't sound like that's going to be too involved for people to do that, just to ensure the safety factor. The kinds of things you deal with are on a more national and international level, I understand, but people need to take those precautions at home as well. And Mike, if I could turn back to you as well, it's been for all of us a challenging past 15 months. Just out of the sake of curiosity, and I've asked a number of our guests how they've handled these past months in terms of both their work life, their personal life, and also their musical life. How has that affected you, Mike, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
Oh, big time. You know, the work that I do hanging wallpaper for people, I'm in people's homes all day long, and so there's just no way we could do that for the entire time this whole thing has been a problem. So that gave me a lot of time to myself. So I practiced. I started I continued a big giant project in my yard. I'm rebuilding a car from scratch.
That is a big project. Good heavens.
Yeah, I wish I had done something different, like mow the lawn.
What kind of, just for curiosity, what kind of car is it? A classic car or a heavy, or what are we doing?
It's a 1970 El Camino.
Oh wow! Good for you.
I've got more money in that than you can even imagine.
Now, what's the prognosis in terms of, are we ever going to see you driving it to a rehearsal at the LA Winds?
Maybe. I'm hoping that it'll be done by the end of the year.
Excellent. Let's hope so. I'm looking forward to seeing it, Mike. All right. I want to thank both of you guys. We're going to take a little break now, and they'll come back a little bit later on in the show. But now I want to turn to another aspect of what we've done, because we have the Memorial Day coming up. And I'd like to share with you a video that we did. Oh, gosh. Actually, this one I think was almost 20 years old. We've played the piece on a number of occasions, but I keep finding myself going back to this one, maybe for nostalgia's sake. It contains all of the songs associated with the various services, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, Marines, and the Coast Guard. And usually when we do this live, it's a very moving thing. And I think we'll also do it, I'm counting on doing it at the Skirball concert. And we usually will have people who have affiliations with the branch of the service, that when that tune comes up, to have it stand up. It's a very, very, very moving experience. So Paul, if we can take a look at now, this is the Armed Forces medley, and then we'll bring everybody back after some final words. Isn't that just a great arrangement of that? Very patriotic, and I think it'll set you off on a hopefully exciting and wonderful and heartfelt Memorial Day weekend, okay? And let me tell you just a little bit about what's coming up. We won't have the 4 Wins on Wednesday series, but there will be a special live stream that we're going to be putting together in advance of the concert that we're going to be doing at Screwball Center. And thank you for the hundreds of you who are actually more than 1,000 that are on our mailing list, and you will soon be getting information about purchasing tickets for that. I'll advise you to do that as soon as you can, because we only have a limited seating and the tickets are only $10 at a beautiful, beautiful setting. And then also I want to tell you about, we're hoping to start up our indoor concerts again sometime perhaps in October or November. And those of you who subscribed in the past and had to deal with cancellation of concert tickets, those tickets will be good, of course, when we start up again in the fall. It's going to be very exciting. And also, I want to thank those of you who made contributions to the band, because we're going to be putting that money towards a performance with the American Concert Band Association in Santa Fe, New Mexico next season as well. It's going to be very exciting. Thank you for all your help and all that. And I look forward to seeing many of you, hundreds of you, live and in person at the Screwball Center. And now, may we bring back our guests for today. Let me thank them as they appear again. Yes, thank you, Debbie, again. Mike, great job. Daniel Orkin, great job, everybody. Let's say goodbye, and we'll see you all and many of you at the Screwball Center. Thank you very much.